Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Streamed live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommy Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis. I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation, and I'm joined this morning by my good friend and brother,
Tommy Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Tommy. How are you, my friend?
Doing well, doing excellent. It's a brisk Saturday morning on this 29th day of October. And so excited to be with you again and our community.
Tommy, I'm excited to be with you as well, man. I just got back from a conference. I'll talk a bit more about that. I had a chance to share our broadcast with others, man, who were enthusiastic about trying to join us. I met a number of people that would love to be guests on our show, on our podcast. So we're looking forward to bringing forth some of those wonderful individuals. I even met an individual on the plane back that is with the Cincinnati Library that wants to join us. He attended the conference. Neither of us knew each other or knew that we both attended the same conference. So
wow, on the plane back.
Right.
Hey, and that's the way it works, Eric. Those folks are now traveling a bit more, you're right, because of COVID and some of the restrictions that have been released. And
Right.
So we have a little bit more freedom, and our clients are coming back together. Conferences are coming together. And some of these conferences, as you know, we're coming back together after sometimes 3 years. Right. And so to connect either at the conference or at the seminar, at the workshop, and on the plane, it's good to see people again.
Right. Absolutely. Tommy, talk about your week, man.
Yeah, week was good. I just a lot of things were going on, man. We have a lot of projects happening at the same time, but I did want to shout out one blessing that we continue to receive and hopefully bring value. I want to shout out our Colorado client, Durango Public Schools 9R. Durango, Southwest Colorado, smaller town, maybe about 20,000 people in the community, tightly knit community, a beautiful, beautiful country, as well as people. The people are beautiful. And we're working with the school district. And last week we went out, my team, myself and 5 others on the team, we went out to conduct their professional development training in DEI&B.
Right. Excellent.
For each school, each area. So I'm calling them out and really shouting them out this morning, Eric, is because of 2 reasons. One, they are truly committed to really assisting in the holistic education of the students through the adults, right? Staff, administrators, parents, community members. And so the next generation of global thinkers are coming from this thought that we can educate our students to be global thinkers and not narrow-minded, not focus on just a small town or just a particular part of the country. The second thing is that they understand that this is a journey, Eric, and that's what I enjoy the most. I have offered up to them in our business a kind of a roadmap, a process. And I've asked them, and they have accepted. I've asked them to trust the process, right? Trust the process. And that's very, very important. And now, in the year 1, almost year 1.5, they being the majority of folks are turning to say, I see what you were trying to do and tell us, right? Even with the bumps, the bruises, the starts, the stops, I called all of that out. Right. I called it all out. And, in month 6, this is what's going to happen. Well, so where I am now, man, I am elated. I'm excited. And I would like to invite other school districts throughout the country to have these courageous and diverse conversations regardless of the moment, and sometimes these outside, political thoughts, but ultimately it's about these babies.
That's
so
right.
I wanted to shout out Durango.
That's powerful, Tommy. Glad to hear of the continuing good work that you're doing with a wonderful client that gets it, that is trusting you, trusting the process, but they're engaged. And you and I know that we are facilitators. We don't purport to have all the answers for every situation. Our job is to partner with our clients to utilize our own thought leadership, our own experience, but our own skill set in facilitation to help them oftentimes solve a lot of their own problems and put the systems in place that will work nicely within their institution, their environment, the cultures that they lead. So kudos to that school district. This week, Tommy, was a great week for me. I was in San Diego. Judy was in Los Angeles, so we were going in two different directions. I had the opportunity to speak at SHRM's National Inclusion Conference in San Diego. Was just really excited, looking forward to being able to speak to these inclusion thought leaders around what I call the DEI Oz principle. And learned a lot in preparing for that session. I talked about, I think last week, it's just a takeoff of the Wizard of Oz. And, where Dorothy, the lion, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, all were going to Emerald City, Oz, if you will, to find the wizard so that he could solve all their problems. They get there, they find the wizard. He's a little short, bald guy that doesn't have any problems. So they have to sort of figure out how to solve their own problems. Yeah. The other thing that I discovered, Tommy, is that that I was looking at the backstory of the Wizard of Oz, and they were talking about it was a story in many ways about bullying.
Oh,
and
wow.
that Dorothy, her neighbor, Miss Gunthel, Toto had bitten her, and she was wanting to kill the dog, and so Dorothy fell asleep, and then sort of Miss Gunthel was the Wicked Witch of the West. And what was interesting is that when you look at C-suite leaders and executives, and we think they have all the answers, and we found out that the wizard did not. But what did the wizard do? He was under a lot of stress. He had an image to uphold. He knew he didn't have any answers, so he tried to give them an impossible task. I need you to go bring back the broom from the Wicked Witch of the West. I know they're not coming back. In many organizations, one of the things that I said, Tommy, is that a lot of times if we're not careful, our leaders will ask DEI professionals and chief diversity officers to go do the impossible. You don't have any staff, any budget, but I want you to go out into the organization and fix all of our representation problems, all the different challenges that people are facing. And but what's interesting is that sometimes when we're given an impossible task with no tools or anything else, we come back with some solutions in progress, to the surprise of leaders. And so, so I had a great time sort of sharing some of the principles, learned a lot about leaders. I talked about last week that this year, as we talk about the Great Resignation, 57% of people in the typical organization are actively looking for another job. For the C-suite, it's 70%. 70% of C-suite leaders are actively looking for another job. 80% of them struggled to sort of readjust through the pandemic. So the adjustment for them around technology was even harder. I think it's 73% of them are struggling with mental health issues and preferring to use robots versus people. So it's just interesting, just some of the things that people are underneath that we're not aware of. But I'll share one last thing. Probably one of the most impactful stories that came from this trip was my flight back. I had a flight out of San Diego to Dallas, then Dallas to Cincinnati. So in the Dallas to Cincinnati flight, I was in first class.
Yes, sir.
And so I was in the second row. a mother was in the first row, and she kept turning around taking pictures of her son. And so I said, ma'am, I don't like the window seat, Tommy, but I said, ma'am, would you like to sit, next to your son? She said, can I? This is his first flight. I said, absolutely. So I switched with her, and she came back and sat with her son. And then I was sitting next to a young brother, and we were talking. And then there was a white gentleman across the aisle that was, almost like a good old boy. And he was kind of dipping into our conversation a little bit. And he said, skin color doesn't matter. And just started saying random things. He said, when I grew up around some black guys, and, we even used to use the N word, not the A, not the ER, the A, I was like, why would you need to raise that, with me? I don't know why people with strangers. But you know what, Tommy, I have decided that I'm really not going to let things offend me if a person didn't intend offense. He's trying to connect with me. He was awkward with his thinking. And so we just were having a conversation. And then I started saying, well, there's a lot of ways in which people are different. I said, for me, I'm not just, a black guy. I also have neural diversity issues. I'm ADHD. He said, oh, ADHD, that's not even real. I'm so sick of people making those things up for our child. I said, no, yeah, it is real. I said, I've got 4 children that are ADD. And I said that for me, I said, when I started utilizing medication, it changed things for me, and it allowed me and enabled me to do things that are difficult for me. I used to, Tommy, it would take everything I had to write a letter. And then I'd get it done and I'd give it to my staff like, okay, there it is. But after medication, I'm able to, edit letters 8, 9, 10 times. And it just doesn't feel the same. And so I was sharing that with him. Unbeknownst to me, Tommy, there was somebody else listening. And when the plane landed, I was in the baggage claim waiting on my bag. And I felt a little tap on my shoulder. And it was a little boy that was sitting behind me. He said, sir, I just wanted to thank you for letting my mom sit next to me. He said, but I wanted to tell you that I listened in on your conversation. He said, and I appreciated what you were saying. He said, because I'm neurodiverse too. He said, I'm autistic. And Tommy, I was just moved, man. That
come on, Eric.
Just owning something, just randomly owning something. And then that making that young man feel like, you're my people. We're in the same community, and I'm grateful for that. So,
Eric, thank you so much for sharing that story. And I hope that our listening community and those who may track this podcast after this date, I heard 2 things amongst many. One, I heard that there were times in the conversation that you were having with your mate next to you, and then you have another individual eavesdropping.
right. All good though. All good. Everybody's listening to everybody.
Everybody's listening to everybody. It's tight quarters on the plane.
Right.
But you were sharing some things about your identity, some characteristics about your own identity.
Right.
Being comfortable in your own skin.
Right.
Right. And then there may be an opportunity where there was someone that was kind of minimizing,
right,
not deducing your own identity.
Right.
That doesn't exist.
Right.
I don't see that, etc. At the same time, I heard that silently people are listening and watching to find their own identity and to have it validated and affirmed.
Right.
That my uniqueness, which is diversity, is what I have, and it is who I am.
Right.
Diversity is uniqueness. I would like to invite everyone to really lean into your own uniqueness and others, Eric.
That's right.
And instead of always throwing the broad generalization blanket,
right,
such as we're all human beings.
Right.
That's a given if
right.
we're talking to human beings, right?
Right.
That's a given. But what other unique characteristics and skills and talents and etc. do you bring into this world, right? And especially those things that we can't always see.
Right.
So the young man that tapped you on the shoulder, I would say that takes courage as well.
Right.
To
right.
To track you down wherever that was in the airport, because we always go the same way. We're herded in the same way, and to tap you down to tell you that thank you for allowing me to be represented through your dialogue with someone else.
Right, right. I told the gentleman, I was telling him, I said, I'm not ashamed of, and I even conceded, because what I do when a person is a little bit argumentative, but really still trying to connect with you, sometimes I'll lean into their perspective.
Yeah.
I said, hey, I get it. You know, you're saying that sometimes too often we overdiagnose kids, or we sometimes give people excuses. I understand that. You know, there's some legitimacy to that. We all have to watch out for that. I said, but I see ADHD as my superpower. It's not a weakness. It doesn't make me less than. It is my power. I said, when I was growing up, I thought I hated school. I thought I hated reading. I didn't realize that I don't like reading things that I'm not interested in.
Yeah.
But when I found something that I was interested in, I can't get enough of it. I said, so I'm constantly consuming information about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, golf. You know, anything that I'm passionate about, man, I'm consuming as much information as I can. And so I think that it's helpful for us to look at how God made us and understand that we were wonderfully made. And that we don't have to be ashamed at all of who we are. We get up, we step into this world as a unique individual, man, and we give it our best shot. And what I've discovered, Tommy, is the older I'm getting, I'm really choosing to respond to whatever you throw at me with love and with a calm spirit. Because I believe that that also extends our lives and it enriches the lives of others. And that's what I was doing at the conference, man. I was just walking around kind of talking to people. You know, even though I'm an extrovert, sometimes, I mean, I don't like really talking with people, man. Sometimes I just go sit down.
Yeah.
And I'll plop down in a chair and a sister plop down in another chair, Latinx sister. And so we both were exhausted. We just sort of struck up a conversation. And she says to me, she says, I'd like to say something to you. She says, I don't know why I want to say this, but I'm mad sometimes that I don't think that Black people are as interested in connecting with the Latinx community, that there's too much division there. And what do you think about that? So she was throwing something at me like, what do you think about that? She says, I don't know why I'm even saying this. I said, I agree with you. I said, there is a rift there that shouldn't exist between people of color. She said, we're the same people. I said, I agree. And our conversation started from there. And she was telling me about, you know, her getting her green card and eventually becoming a citizen. And her husband's African-American. He's working at a college. She said that, you know, with everybody else that comes to the college, they found jobs for their spouses. They didn't really work actively to find anything for me. And as we began to talk, I saw this brilliance inside of her and this hunger inside of her. And I affirmed that. And before we knew it, man, she was just in tears because people are out here not being affirmed, not knowing who they are. And so as we talked and she described her husband, I said, can you call your husband up? I said, please get your husband on the phone right now, because I don't want you going home talking about I met some brother at the conference. No, call him up. Let's talk. And so she called him up on FaceTime, man. And he and I talked for about 20 minutes. Beautiful brother, man. But I'm just grateful. My point was that I want to live in this world in a way that's more appreciative, that's more encouraging, because as we do that to those around us, I think it brings some gifts back to us too, Tommy.
Eric, we're trying to find answers.
Yeah.
We have those who are seeking the answers and those who may potentially be, you know, kind of throwing rocks, you know, in the glass house and creating disruptions. And then we have people following behind that to say, you know, how do we fix this broken glass, this broken system, this broken XYZ? Mm-hmm. All of that, what I hear and what I know, what I've experienced and others as well, Eric, is that there is a need for mental, spiritual, physical wellness. mental health and illness or wellness is real. Right. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. And you're talking about intentionally, what do you do to not, take on certain energy?
Right.
You have another woman who's, plops down next to you, and her energy drives into her mind to say or ask something. I don't know why I'm saying this.
Right.
It's her energy.
Right.
Seeking something.
Right.
So
that's
a
conversation.
real conversation. Eric, that is the esoteric communication. That is that our energy, our spirits are talking, their vibrations. And when we as human beings bump up against one another, we really do feel what's good for our energy and what's bad, right? Sometimes what's bad, we overthink it to see, I can solve it, I can challenge it, right? I get into this debate, or I get into discourse, I'll get into a conversation. And then sometimes in our moments of calm and peace, another energy will come and say, here's a little nugget, because you're now prepared to receive it. It is for you and that person.
Right.
So God said, be still. Our energies are not still. Our minds are not still. We are moving at warp speed toward a direction we don't know, a destination, Eric. It is 2022, and we are barreling along, right? We're information overload. We're inundated with stuff, and I don't have the research behind this. I just have the anecdotes and the kind of social experiments. But I don't know if we know what's going on, we as humans right now, if we know what's going on, right, long term, right. So I know we'll talk about some things that I'm getting excited. Want to thank and welcome our community, but these conversations on the plane, Eric, etc., as facilitators, as a constant learner, as you are, a consummate and professional educator, these moments and lessons are relatable, and they're instantaneous, meaning I just had this conversation. Let me have a conversation with you, and let's talk.
Right. Let's see where that goes. I want to share one other thing about this DEI Oz principle, Tommy, that I share with you, because I was a little nervous about it. Because I'm coming to this conference on inclusion. I said, I'm going to say some things to you that your mind might not want to receive. Because the Oz principle basically says, part one says that we need to demonstrate more empathy to the C-suite and to our leaders. And so marginalized people are struggling right then and there. How can you ask me, in all the ways that I'm marginalized, to have empathy for them? They are the ones that are creating this mess that I'm in. Well, I beg to differ sometimes, that they didn't create the culture. They've navigated it, and now they've landed at the top. You see, I've gone behind the door now, Tommy, and I've seen the wizard. I've seen the wizard when he's not on the loudspeaker, what he looks like. And sometimes it's looked like this to me, Tommy. I've literally talked to CEOs and leaders that were on Zoom like this.
Yes.
Their head in their hands, dealing with the perfectionist paradox and feeling like there's so many things that are changing now with supply chain things, the recession, with not being able, with turnover of employees. All those things are landing at their feet. And yet every day they've got to be, hey, we're getting there. We're on our way. Positive things are happening. So that's part one. And so I'm saying to people, number one, you have to try to understand, demonstrate empathy towards them, support them, develop a strong relationship with them, be reliable. Then part two is you got to figure out your own way. You have to utilize your own talent, skill, ability to design answers. So don't wait for the wizard to solve it. To some extent, you have the opportunity to make some change as well. I'm asking people to realize the loneliness of some of those leaders and to develop relationships that allow you to influence them, like Joseph did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was a little concerned that people would reject that. But to my surprise, man, many people came up to me and said, you know what? I never, ever thought about that.
Eric, again, you're hitting the nail on the head today. We've talked about emotional intelligence before. We've talked about implicit bias. We've talked about all of this and continue to talk about it because it's from our perspective, it's a competency, it's a skill, it's a need that would potentially be able to resolve some of the issues that we're facing in our organizations. And some of those issues are inability to handle change. Right?
Yep.
That's a skill of emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Poor interpersonal relations, right? That's a component of emotional intelligence. And then also really self-reflection and self-development and continuous improvement as a person, as a team, as an organization. Again,
Right.
Person or individual, team, the group, right? Smaller group, and the organization, right? Be it the company or the community or the world, whatever that organization is. And so the concept of emotional intelligence and diversity, for example, years ago, I don't know how many years, maybe 10, 20, 30 years or last week, folks were saying, that's, that touchy feely, right?
Right.
That's not really, that's not real, right?
Right.
Just like on an airplane, that's not real.
Right.
But it is when our C-suite leaders and others are head in hands.
Right.
And it's not that they don't have the skill to do their job.
Mm-hmm.
They're wrapped up in something else, right? And unfortunately, we or they may not feel that they have the platform to release it. Right? They may feel that they don't have the platform. I cannot tell people that I'm stressed the heck out. I cannot tell people that I truly don't know what's going on.
Right.
And I'm trying to put my best thinking on this, but my emotions are overriding my thinking.
Right.
Hold on.
Right.
Another change? Hold on. I did not institute that change.
Right.
Hold on. Change is landing on top of the leaders just like it is the individual contributor. It's stacking up on top of each other, and we're becoming burdened by the mental weight. And some of us are simply checking out. I don't need this job anymore, right? I'm going to give some time here, maybe 4 hours out of the 8-hour day, and the other 4 hours, I am going to just do whatever I want to do, right? So that's where we are.
Let's grab some of Ken's comments
Yep.
and because we want to welcome the community in. If any of you out there have comments that you want to make, please share those because we want to touch on those. So Ken says that's why emotional intelligence is so rare. Our own biases get in the way. I think that is something that I believe that we have to come to life with humility. And sometimes when you have been victimized, you have been marginalized, if we're not careful, Tommy, we'll allow that to change the character and nature of who we are. And we can sometimes get overcome by bitterness. And then we want to try to respond to oppression and marginalization with bitterness. And I would say to you that although the temptation is there to do that, that's not actually anything that can help you. The research says that every time we go through a stressful encounter, our body feels that, and life is going out of us. But every time we recount the situations, our body goes through the same machinations, if you will. And so I would suggest that that sometimes you cannot afford to be responding to oppression, marginalization with bitterness and sort of bitterness towards everybody.
Yeah.
Not just the person that came at you, but just the anger towards everybody that can kill you. And so I find that when on my good days, Tommy, I hope that nobody thinks that I'm responding right the whole way. I'm not.
Right.
Sometimes you say something crazy to me, I'm gonna say something crazy right back. So I don't have this down perfectly. I'm still on the potter's wheel. But on my good days, when I get it right, Tommy, I see that the strength and power of love and humility and forgiveness is so much stronger than any hatred or anger that you can bring toward me. So,
yeah, I like what Ken is saying. You know, our personal insecurities are barriers to EQ, right? Our personal insecurities. I repeated that because it's resonating with me as I have learned over time that there are certain things I'm not insecure about, right? In the moment, then maybe I was insecure and it was very important to me. And then life continued to happen. And it's like, no, that's not that important at all. You can say whatever you want to about me on that, right? You want to try to throw a stone at, Tommy, it took you X amount of years to graduate from undergraduate school.
Right.
Yeah. How many years did it take you? Like, well, 7.5 years. I was diddle daddling. I fell off. I got back on, whatever.
Right.
It took you 7.5 years to get a bachelor's degree. I was like, yeah. Man, how do you feel? Man, I feel like I got a bachelor's degree.
Right. And I'm still happy.
I'm not insecure about that.
Right.
I remember at the time, my father was like, man, I'm not taking your test. My mother said, I'm not taking your test.
Right.
Have a good go of it. You need to get out of school. I'm not going to pay for it forever, but I'm not taking nothing. Right. So I took ownership, and it actually built security in me. There are certain things I went through. It built security. Those pitfalls, those falling on my face, if you will. And I don't mean to sound like I'm talking about myself here.
No, not at all.
I want to sound like that we all have these stories.
Yeah.
And as Kim was saying about the insecurities, that's what I'm saying. Let us, if we can, reduce, if not eliminate, these insecurities. Easier said than done. I do understand that. But who is holding on to your identity? Eric Ellis was on the plane sharing his truth, his identity. Another person jumped in, says, I don't see color, right? I don't see race. That mental illness or that disability is not real.
Right.
If Eric Ellis was insecure, it would have been a debate.
Yeah, it's an argument.
It's an argument.
Right there in first class.
It's a first class argument.
Right.
Literally.
Absolutely.
So, no, we need to say, all right, what am I secure with?
Let me say one other thing too, Tommy. So while the guy was saying crazy things and I was batting him back with kindness, unbeknownst to me, the person next to him was the guy that's the chief operating officer of the Cincinnati Library. And so he's listening. And so it's not a consultant that's on a stage giving a speech. It's now a consultant sitting in a chair, just interacting with basic humanity. And he is watching my kindness towards this man and then saying, well, who are you? And now we're going to get connected and may even do some business together because of the way I showed up in the world when the cameras weren't on.
Yes, indeed.
And Tommy, I think that it's true. The camera's on both when we get it right and when we get it wrong. And so, I've gotten it wrong in my life sometimes, and camera's on then as well. But I say to people that, you want to always just be trying to do the right things because you never know who's watching, who's listening. And I'm shocked how many people were listening in this conversation because, as you know, people don't do a lot of talking on the plane in general. You know, a lot of sleeping is going on. And for all of these conversations to happen, there's some lessons that I think that that God wants us all to get from this particular trip.
Eric, this is reminding me very quickly, if you don't mind. Thank you, community, for your patience here. This is reminding me of one of the conversations that I was having out in Durango. We came together for a dinner, and my team, the Make It Plain team, and the Durango team, which are very, very intelligent, very nice, kind, and kind of results driven people. They want to move forward in a positive way. And I remember there was a fairly rich conversation happening with two of the individuals to my left, right? For me, it was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I leaned in,
Right.
Eric. I was not really contributing to the conversation. I was listening because in my mind, I was actually trying to connect certain dots,
Mm-hmm.
right? I had experienced some things in the district and they were giving me some context, right? This is after a year of working with them. And so once one dot was connected, I was like, oh, okay. It's starting to make sense now. And so I'm leaning in. There were 6 people, almost 8 people to my right who had wanted to ask me something because I saw them looking at me, right? And they wanted to talk to me.
Right.
But Eric, they saw how I was listening to these other people and their energy turned to the other people. In other words, I was speaking by not speaking. I'm just learning that. I'm just acknowledging right now. So again, I'm the consultant. I'm always sharing, but there was something being said that got my attention. Those others who wanted my attention said, whatever is getting Tommy's attention in this moment must be important to him. So it must be important to me. That was what they thought, right? I take great pride in allowing God to speak through me to other people. Be still, be humble, be silent, and see how loud silence is, right? See how loud it is. Because some people who are marginalized, who are unseen, and in some cases unheard, they simply want to be seen and want to be heard, right?
Yep.
And as humble and gracious human beings to others who exercise empathy, who exercise selflessness, right? And who also exercise shut the hell up moments, right? We say, hey, your world, your life, your identity, your stuff is just as important to you as it is to me. Let me listen to you. Let me hear you, right? And I was triggered by that story when you were talking about how you're the consultant, you share, etc., and you were listening. This is a lesson for me as I'm talking right now, but I'm listening to what you're saying, what I'm saying, what the community is saying. This is what courageous conversations is all about. Diversity conversations. Are we having different, unique conversations with ourselves to grow and with others to grow?
Right.
Or are we in the same mindset, Eric?
Right.
Are we in the same mindset?
And Tommy, I like what you're saying because you're saying that we're having a conversation. We're talking about things that we've done. We're learning from that. And sometimes when I share a story, it sounds like that's the character of who I am. What goes unsaid is that actually I'm sharing this because it's new revelation that I've gained. And so I'm sharing with the community new revelations that we're walking in, and I haven't talked about the old ways in which I behaved. And so the old ways in which I behaved was when you said something crazy, I'd call you on that. I felt it was my responsibility to check you on that. And so I spent a lot of years in my life getting people together, not being patient, not being as humble, and not being as kind, and being triggered by whatever you threw out there. And I'm grateful to have arrived to this level of understanding. But do not be deceived in believing this has been who I've been all my life, because I don't want anybody to feel like somehow this is beyond achievable for them. I also want to go back to what Ken said. He says, I am enough. And he said, saying it and believing it are not the same.
Come on.
And I want to just take a moment, Ken, to just sit there for a while and hold those peas in our mouth. Because I think that that's one of the greatest challenges that people have, is believing that I am enough. And we do things on social media and everything to try to convince the world that we're enough, but we don't really feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that in many ways, we aren't enough in isolation by ourselves. We are enough in community and in relationship with others. And that's the thing about being human, is that we need to belong. We need to be a part of a community. And sometimes the mistakes that we've made in our humanity can separate us from our relationships. And I think that as we keep growing, it is our prayer that lessons learned, that the good in our character is enough to overshadow some of the challenges, weaknesses, and failures that we have also delivered.
Eric, I'm going to ask you, and ask the community, staying in the same vein. When one believes that they are not enough, and maybe that thought is around not enough for other people, or even in some cases, not enough for a single person. If it's a relationship, be it a love relationship or a platonic relationship, and that self-doubt begins to creep in to one's mind, one's speech. They may even say, I'm not enough. And then one's energy, that energy may turn into sadness, and in some cases, depression, and then chronic illness, right? My question is, for either yourself or any advice to anyone, any counsel, how might one begin to, the Toyota way is Kaizen, to push stop. How does one begin to push stop or pause in the moment of complete turmoil and uncertainty, right? When we're grasping desperately for self, how do we trust that the stop will be enough to help me assess, am I enough?
That's a good question. So let me start by saying this, that I think all people, this is something that's common to man, that all people question. They ask the question, am I enough? We only down the people who say it out loud. As long as you just say it internally and allow it to tear you up on the inside, you're fine. So we look at people as being weak who might ask the question out loud, but I think we all ask that question. And I believe that often the answer to us is no. And when I say no here, no, I'm not enough, it sends us into then entertaining failure a lot more, and questioning whether we can get there. They talked about the imposter syndrome, that people discovering that I'm not who they think I am and being fearful of that. I think the things that help me to overcome that, number one, my relationship with God, that I know that Christ in my life is enough, that me and my buddy Christ are enough, and that me and my family, we're enough. And I hope I don't do the kind of things that cause me to lose their confidence, lose their love, But part of being in a beautiful, good family is that they love us in spite of our humanity. I was just watching my three adult children. I got four, but three of them were together last night. And there we were, all sitting in the kitchen. My wife's out of town. Now, my wife is the absolute glue for the family. Everybody talks to her all day and all night. They call her all the time. So now here, the rest of us are here in the household, okay, mama's not here. We all here, And so it was a beautiful thing to see them enjoying each other and enjoying me. And we do that for a minute, and then everybody goes to their corners. I go to my room, I fidget with whatever I'm fidgeting with, all of that. But I think that's it, Tommy, that we all go through those periods of questioning, are we enough? And the answer being given, I'm fearful that I'm not enough. So I say it all the time in terms of enough business, all the people that are depending on us, all the people in my family. That's a huge amount of pressure that it's not even popular to talk about.
Yep.
Nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah.
They already decided you're a rich guy and you got rich people's problems. So, I don't want to hear that. Yep. So now you're just isolated down to you, and maybe your significant other, Tommy, that's a very difficult question. And I don't think that people get out of that on their own. That's why I feel, last thing I'll say, Tommy, here, that's why I feel so compelled to encourage people that they are enough. Because I don't want people to give up before they even get a chance to get in the fight good.
Yep.
Just say, I'm done. I'm not going to make it. So when I see people, God has given me a gift of discernment. But for me, that gift is all about telling people who they are, not who they're operating as today in this moment, but who I see them as being based upon just listening to their questions or their conversation. There's something I see beyond that. I was grateful for when Dr. Virgil Wood called me up a year and a half ago, and says, is this Eric Ellis? My name is Dr. Virgil A. Wood. Do you know who I am? No, sir. And he said, well, let me read what you wrote in your book 6 years ago when you signed. And then I Googled him and found that he was the man that Dr. Martin Luther King called his teacher. So that man has come into my life to tell me who I am. And I have just wept a few times, because sometimes, Tommy, when you and I have big ideas about ways we want to change the world, and for me, one of those was trying to recruit drug dealers, gang leaders, killers, bring down violence in exchange for partnering. When I say that to most people, they look at me like I'm crazy. And this man could hear that. And he said, that's from God. And then he started affirming other things that I was thinking about. And then all of a sudden, I start feeling seen and heard, and maybe not just crazy. Maybe I'm not just crazy to desire these things, but we need people to affirm us. And Tommy, that's what I want to do to others in the world, man, is just affirm them. I affirm you today.
Yes, sir.
Because of who you are in my life. Man, we have so much fun. It ain't even right. I mean, it's like stealing, man. that we have such a great time. And yet I know that the battles you face are big, but I also know that what God has placed in you is enough.
Yeah, Eric, I affirm you as well. You continue to be enough. I have had two thoughts over the last several months about you, Eric. One of which I sincerely thank you and love you. And I question God briefly when I am with you and you are sharing yourself with me. I ask, why me? Right? Why me? So it's the laughter, and then it's also the sounding board.
Right.
And the sounding board is what I like to be. I've actually known that in my life, I want people to be comfortable, to be happy, because I'm around, right? And they say, "Hey, where's Tommy?"
Right.
I wanted those cheers moments, right? Norm, all that good stuff. And when I'm with you, I'm always thanking God, literally thanking God. At times when we're golfing,
Right.
and I'm in the woods or I'm close to the water, because I stay in the woods and I stay near
Right,
water.
right.
So
prayer locations in the woods.
when my prayer location,
Right.
God sends my balls in different directions so I can have prayer with them.
So I can get private time with him, right up there next to them trees. Me too.
And so I always thank him for you. And then secondly is that I continue to learn from you, your family, your thoughts when you were younger, that you've always wanted a family, and then you have a family, and then at times, Eric, you have shared some, I believe, very personal information with me that I hold true to my heart and confidential. And so I'm going to ask that you and the community.
Yeah, you're okay, Tommy. I love you, man. Yeah.
That you pray for my son. That he's okay. And that he is enough.
Yeah, that's right.
So
that's right.
I want to tell my son,
yeah,
you're enough.
That's right.
You are enough.
That's right, Tommy.
I've learned from Eric. I've learned from the community. I've learned from my late mother and father.
Right.
So Bryce Lewis, you're enough, my man.
That's right.
You're enough. So thank you, Eric. Thank
you.
Hey,
man, I love that, Tommy. Because see, this is why God gave us a show.
Yes, sir.
So we can just sit here and have a conversation with each other, man. We don't care about, if everybody else get it, good. If you miss it, well. But this is a breakthrough moment,
yes, sir,
for us about the difference between entertainment, social media, the fake world out there that's trying to get likes and everything else. Tommy, we don't want to be caught up in it, but we are anyhow.
Yes, sir.
We're caught up in a materialistic world that's always keeping up with the Joneses and comparing ourselves. And so without even trying, Tommy, we're in it. The start gun is shot off.
Yep.
My kid's doing this. My kid's doing that. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I live here. That's the world that we're living in. And no matter whether you can just be critical of that world or be trying to live in that world, that's the world that we're living in. And those are the value systems that have captured us. And so what you just said is where I'm at with my children completely.
Yes.
You have to go against the grain. So the current is going this way. To say what you just said, you got to go this way.
Yes.
Because what it means is, Bryce, I'm no longer measuring you by anything else.
Yep.
But the standard of appreciation, and love and the purity of the perfection that God made you, just you as by yourself. Absent your performance in school,
Yep.
absent
Yep.
your goals and objectives for your life, and
Yep.
absent your success in sports or anything else, you're enough.
Yeah.
And I don't want anything that has captured my attention in the world, and any pressure that I put on you as my child to allow you to spend any moments questioning whether you're enough. And so I'm grateful for that with my children.
Yep.
That my daughter got her MBA through the pandemic. My three sons are still doing school and their music and all like that. And whether they finish school or not is not even the issue, Tommy. I want them to absolutely know that every morning that they get up and that I see them, that I'm grateful. I'm very proud of you. I sent my children a note on Thanksgiving, on Father's Day. I said, I don't need anything.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
already have the gift that I need.
Yes, sir.
That's the gift that I want in my life is the four of you. And I'm grateful for that, Tommy. And I'm going to say one other thing, Tommy. I want to make a declaration of spending more time with each of them individually. Because like I said, even last night, we spent some time together, and then everybody went back to the corners,
Yeah, yeah, right.
And too often, Tommy, it's not until we're laid up in the hospital somewhere that we start thinking about, I wish I would have spent more time, you know what I'm saying? That's a part of what you're saying right here, right now, Tommy.
Yeah.
Bryce just came back to my mind, man, in the sweet, brilliant, handsome, respectful, honorable young man he is, man. And
Yeah.
I'm just grateful that you shouted out to him today, because that's in my spirit as well. But I want to be able to deliver more love to my family and to those around us. And I think that God has given us a gift today.
Yes.
To share a very important principle. We were going to talk about Kanye and all like that, but God had a plan. That's what I love about you. I'm going to address this too, Tommy.
Yes, sir.
That sometimes when we start thinking about planning things, getting everything all structured out, sometimes we can structure God right out of our lives, and we can structure out and plan out authentic conversations that are desperately needed. So guys like you and I that are used to being planned and prepared. I mean, you skidded into the show this morning like, hey, no, man, I'm fine with that. But I tell you, when we skid in, when we feel underprepared, I think that's the clay that God works best with.
I completely agree, Eric Ellis. Completely. Three things. One, community, you know this. Obviously, Eric and I know this, that we prepare for our conversations. Just like Eric says, Eric does the heavy lifting, thinking through some things, throws it to me, I react, and I'm thinking about what I'm going to say and do a little research, right, to follow up. This is all pre-programmed. Right. That's one. Two is that this is a diversity conversation. We're bringing our authentic selves. This is who we are. We can transition into, the professional consultant tactician,
right?
But this is the conversation. And then three is that, from my perspective, I'm also continuously looking for answers. And as God says, no, that's not the program that I have in store today, because I know the answers that you're looking for. And although this is a conversation that you, Eric, and you, Tommy, think it's just between you, I know it's not. So it's not even just the people in the community, and thank you, community. Right. It's the vibrations that are going out into the atmosphere, because we're having this conversation. And I know for a fact that people are feeling certain things because we are generating these positive conversations, even over difficult and sensitive topics. So I want to thank you and the community every day. And Tracy, to your son, Jordan, we will pray for him. We will pray for him. And please, anyone else in our community that needs prayer for your loved one, for your friends, for your community, this is what part of the conversation is: to lift each other up, to elevate each other up, to laugh, to cry, to feel, and to plan for what we know is the best for us and ours.
And so, Tommy, with that, I'll close out with a word of prayer. God, I want to thank you for showing up with us today, this morning. We didn't expect it. We weren't thinking about the fact that you might join us here today and give us a conversation that was meat for us to eat, but also for others. Right now, God, I ask that you will look down on Jordan, Tracy Artis' son, and encourage him that he's enough. I thank you that his mother was here today to affirm a message that's already been in her heart and her mind, that she's even going to be more intentional about that, because there's something bigger in our children's lives than their achievements. It's really their self-esteem and ultimately their relationship with you. And I'm grateful that you have given all four of my children a relationship with you that doesn't look the same. They all walk this thing out in different ways, but I'm grateful that you're there with them. And I thank you that you've been there with Tommy and myself. And Father, we thank you for this space that you've given us, the freedom that you've given us in the work that we do. We teach people that they ought to be able to bring their authentic selves to work. Today, this morning, Tommy Lewis and I have brought more of our authentic selves to this conversation, and we're grateful for that freedom. And that's the freedom that we want for everybody. And as they know you, they will experience that freedom. So community, we thank you all for joining us here today. We had no idea what we were in store for. Ken Wilson, I love you, man. Thank you for joining us. Dan, Tracy, and everybody else that tuned in to Diversity Conversations today. Thank you for making this a blessed day for us. Take care.
Take care.